I'm so delighted that you've decided to join us today as we come together in love and in service to a world greatly in need of both. I think it is fairly easy to see that these days, well, the familiar paradigm of life on planet Earth is shattering. Life is no longer the way it used to be, and people everywhere are stressed and distressed. While each individual may attribute his or her personal renditions of the theme to have stemmed from events known only to him or her, the fact remains that there is likely more to the equation. Of course, the picture is much vaster than merely what any given person may be enduring. So even though the suffering and dissatisfaction each one faces may seem uniquely personal, it turns out that the continuing battle of life is all-encompassing. Well, some of you have at least had a notion run through your minds that this particular time on Earth feels quite initiatory in nature. Indeed, if the global chaos is not sufficiently daunting, the cacophonous din rattling within the minds of most folks cannot be ignored. Well, for some folks, it seems to be reaching new decibel levels almost every day. Put bluntly, it's a lot to deal with. And many people right now are sagging under the load their psyches are carrying. While I cannot remove the weight each of you feels right now, I can offer my support as you undergo the rigors of initiatory changes that, that are occurring. Indeed, they must occur. So while the path may not always be a pretty one, the evolution you are seeking to accomplish is beautiful. So please know that I am exceedingly grateful for all your efforts on behalf of Earth, and I do extend blessings of strength and, for as peaceful a transition as is possible. So the question for our focus today is, where's the war? War, strife, and other forms of conflict continue, even though many among Earth's population had hoped such events belonged to Earth's history. Well, of course, this is part of the old Piscean story, isn't it? And today I want to offer a perspective on another reality. The reality of the mind that observes all the activities of war. Now, this could be an individual mind, or it could be some form of collective mind, perhaps even some application of what is termed groupthink. Indeed, there are many ways to participate in the phenomenon of mind, whether through sharing mental projections or unconsciously receiving unspoken beliefs and prejudices. Well, in his teachings about how the mind works, the Buddha always reflected that, a perspective that many folks today might reject categorically. Well, in truth, it was rejected by many in his day as well. He often reminded his disciples that the world that is perceived arises into awareness in accordance with the mind that perceives it. In other words, one's perceptions create the field of, quote, reality a person experiences. What's more, it is through language that one describes and therefore creates the world she or he experiences. Now, similarly, it is through language that a person describes and thus creates the self she or he experiences. Of course, this piece of wisdom did not originate with the teachings of the Buddha. In fact, the Vedic masters in India had been saying the very same thing as far back as at least 1,000 years before the Buddha was born. So, what might such a strange theory of mind offer to people in the 21st century? What does it mean, practically speaking, to say that the world arises in accordance with the mind that perceives it? Well, what this statement certainly implies is that at least half of one's perception of reality is actually coming from the self, or at least the part of self referenced as my mind. You see, the way the mind greets and sees the world is by way of its own projections. Indeed, it extrudes, you might say, a thought projection about what it thinks it's perceiving. Then it uses these perceptions to make sense of the world it encounters. So if all one can see is in the world is chaos and turmoil, it might be a good idea to consider a possibility that there could be something amiss in one's projections. Now, this is not to say that the world lacks for examples of chaos and turmoil. Indeed, they can readily be found almost everywhere one looks. Yet, I'm calling your attention to the nature of thought projections to present a window of possibility for seeing through them, or perhaps an opportunity to go free of their more controlling aspects. You see, the mind is a kind of battleground where the ego is continually at war with higher levels of consciousness. Now, given free rein, these battles always end in a lot of suffering. Now, to be clear, these thought projections arise as a kind of knowledge based upon what one has previously experienced. Now, of course, this mental process is very subtle, and it is one that very few people are aware of, even to the slightest degree. The subconscious is busily inputting to the conscious mind well, I guess we'll say the images and sometimes the feelings it has previously accepted as true. The mind then thinks them or pours them out as mental projections. So, excuse me, first the mind emits a projection, then receives it back as a means for determining what it believes is going on. Next, it reacts to the very ideas it projected and subsequently received as if they are true. Let me give you an example that might be helpful here. Call to mind a situation where a police officer is investigating an auto accident. Now, perhaps the officer speaks to 6 different people, all of whom say they saw the accident. Yet even so, each person reports a somewhat different set of facts. Now, how can this possibly happen? The witnesses were all at the same scene. Their minds were alert and functioning in the moment where one car struck another. Yet, from their differing accounts, it would seem as though there may have been 6 different accidents, all occurring at the very same moment, involving the same vehicles and parties to the event. Well, in some cases, the reported number of parties to an accident may not be identical, or even the description of the vehicles involved. But why? Well, each person thought she or he saw the accident in the present moment. Yet in actuality, each was seeing a combination of at least 2 events and perhaps more. They were clearly in the visual field of the accident occurring. Yet the mind of each was busily drawing correspondences between the event of the moment and with similar situations they had previously experienced. For example, let's say that in the accident, a blue car was struck by a red car. If one of the witnesses had previously encountered a speeding red car, he or she might confidently report that the red car was speeding when it hit the blue car. Yet none of the other witnesses reported that potentially significant detail. Another witness who may not have liked something about the appearance of the blue car's driver reports that this driver was going too slow and intentionally impeding traffic. Now, his report may have been influenced by the projection of his aversion toward the blue car's driver. Now, of course, the aversion didn't originate with this witness, or let's say this person's witnessing the particular car accident, did it? It was already in place, hidden away within the regions of his own subconscious. It originated with his interpretation of prior experiences that may not even be in his awareness in the moment of seeing the present accident. Well, let's say a third witness viewed the accident from a slightly different vantage point. Let's also say this witness is the parent of a young child. Well, she reports that the driver of the blue car actually slowed his speed because there was a child standing on a nearby curb who potentially could have ventured into the street. Well, her report clearly reflects her concern for the child on the curb, and her mind projected that the driver of the blue car was also aware of the child and adjusted his speed accordingly. For her, this was true, even though no other witness noted the blue car slowing, nor even the child on the curb. Well, a fourth witness, perhaps a young man who has always wanted to own a flashy red convertible, reports that the red car he saw was a sporty red convertible. Now, he did see or perceive the presence of a convertible, even though none of the other witnesses did. Well, a fifth witness, let's say, was a pedestrian walking along the sidewalk adjacent to the street. Preoccupied in his own thoughts, he did not actually see the red car hit the blue car. However, he was so stunned by the loud sound of the crash that he completely missed this rather important detail. A startled reflex shot through his body and mind and very rapidly filled in the details. Convinced that he had seen the impact, he in turn reports the scenario created by his mind, but drawn from some prior set of experience. His report indicates that the two cars were racing, and that when the blue car pulled in front of the red car simply slowed quickly enough, and thus it ran into the blue car. As for the sixth witness, well, I'll let each of you project a set of details for his or her report. But if we could survey each of you on how your mind would complete the report, we would surely see how differently each mind might have filled in the blanks. Well, each of you would have drawn something from your own past to provide plausible details, you see?